We are especially delighted to welcome our next speaker, Raluca Marian from IRU, the International Road Transport Union, which represents national associations in 80 countries and over 3.5 million road transport operators, including 1 million in the EU alone. Based at IRU's headquarters in Brussels, Raluca is in charge of advocacy for commercial transport by road, including mobility of people and goods, including all road freight transport and logistic matters. Today, she'll be telling us about the road transport industry's efforts to keep supply chains on the move, and as the industry's resilience is tested again, how challenges must be turned into opportunities. Please join me in welcoming Raluca to the stage. Thanks, Raluca.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Do you remember this warning at the beginning of this session today, which was flashing lights and images? Well, you will not see any with me. No presentation, no flashing lights, no images. IRU represents the road transport sector, a sector on the move, so unfortunately or fortunately, you will just have to follow me. Do you like stories? Yeah, good. Yes. So I will start with a little story about DNA. Because Thorsten mentioned in the beginning that IRU is doing something, and that I will say, or I will tell you what IRU is doing. So I will start with this small DNA story. 1948, Europe was torn by war, commercial links were broken, customs, borders were very difficult. And then the United Nations were there in Geneva. And then there was a need for an organization to help fixing all of this. And that's how IRU was created 75 years ago. Now, what is the link with the event today, apart from me telling you what IRU is about? Did you see in one of the presentations before, there were these safety ropes, and it was written TIR. That's what IRU was about in the very beginning. TIR is actually a United Nations Convention about facilitation of border crossing. But now borders are far away. We are talking about Turkey, okay, the UK here, we are talking about Russia, so quite far away. And still, we are still speaking about some security and safety aspects which are related or derived from TIR and still used in the EU. We are still managing this system TIR. By the way, the other system, T-Guarantee, is much more unsecure than TIR. But this is for crossing the border outside of the European Union, and that's what my colleagues in Geneva are doing. So that's not what I'm going to talk about today. That's just the little story about the DNA, because the idea is that safety, security is in our DNA. That's why we were created, to cross borders safely and to rebuild these broken trade connections because of the war. Now, I am heading the EU delegation of IRU in Brussels. So what do you think I'm doing? Lobbying. So lobbying for the road transport sector. And what are the most important files, you think, that we have when we talk to the Brussels politicians and to the bubble, and then what is their connection with security? So the biggest challenges for transport operators today are in the social field, environmental field, and digitalization. What are their connections with security, you may wonder? Let me start with digitalization. We are looking at digitalization at providing a lot of opportunities for the sector, of course. So we have optimization of empty runs and so on in freight, paperless cabins and so on and so forth. A lot of opportunities. But still, again, what is Brussels doing? Legislating, of course. In some cases, very good legislation. In some cases, not so good legislation. And the tendency we are seeing, and here I'm going to make the link with the security, is that more and more data should be provided by transport operators to an undefined number of stakeholders. being government or be it private. And we see initiatives such as access to in-vehicle data or any other proposals that the Union is doing now, even Euro 7, sounds very technical, Euro 7, about Euro 7 vehicles. If you read that proposal, it's written online monitoring system of Euro 7 of pollutant emittents. So, which means there will be a system, a device installed in the vehicle which will monitor and transmit data from the vehicle to, we don't know very sure who, probably European Environment Agency or whatever, at any given moment. We read the CO2 standards for heavy-duty vehicles. What does that mean? It means what kind of vehicles can the manufacturer sell in 2030, 2040 and beyond, zero-emission vehicles targets. Online monitoring system for CO2 emission to be installed on the vehicles, which will transmit this data at any given point to we don't know who. So all of this includes cybersecurity risks. And the moment now all this data goes to the manufacturers automatically, the moment we open this to an undefined number of stakeholders, we also open some risks. So these are aspects we are trying to raise with the politicians so that they understand that when you open everything, there are also consequences. And the question is, who is responsible for these consequences? If the manufacturers can't be, if the operators can't be, because their agreement is not sought, who is responsible for all of this if things go bad? Now, environment. I leave on purpose social at the end because that's where we will talk about parking, a lot of things which have been said until now. So, environment. We say, what's the connection between environment and security? Well, as you know, we are, and that's why also my presentation, it is called At a Crossroads. And what is this crossroads in transport? The crossroads is digital and environmental. So it's the greening of transport, decarbonization, and digitalization. So what is the connection? Well, I will give you just an example. It's always easier to understand when you hear an example. One of the most important files we had in the past 2 years is a file which is building alternative fuel infrastructures in Europe, because it's very difficult to buy an electric truck if you don't have where to charge it, right? So where to put this infrastructure, where to place it. And luckily, the European Commission had this good idea to issue or to propose a piece of legislation whereby member states, countries, have to commit to support building this alternative fuel infrastructure. Some of this infrastructure being placed in safe and secure truck parking areas. So here one link. Now, I'll move to the social. You know, I listened very carefully to Amazon's presentation, and I'm thinking now whether I should change my name. My first name is quite difficult. Do you see it? Raluca. I'm Romanian. And I hear it's very easy. I didn't know that. I've never tried. It's very easy to change name in Romania. No, now, seriously. Seriously. Crime doesn't have nationality. We have round about more than, I heard a figure before, 400,000. No, we are doing a survey every year. We have round about just truck drivers, because we do it for passenger transport as well, over 500,000 missing drivers now, and because it's an aging population with very low new entrants, very low interest in youth, let's say, of youth, we are forecasting around about 2 million missing drivers by 2026, because the average age of truck drivers is around about 50. I think it's 49, 50. So there will be a massive wave of retirement soon. We need new blood as well. There will be, we hope, to get more drivers to make the conditions more attractive in the European Union, because this is really threatening the supply chains. It's not only a problem of our sector. We have many shippers in the room. It's everybody's problem, because if we don't have the drivers, nobody can carry the goods. And you just heard 77 Over 75% of land goods transport in the EU is trucks, so we can't do without them, even with a little bit of shift to rail. So what is the solution? Improving driving conditions, I'll go again, but also third country drivers. We have around about 250,000 drivers outside of the European Union working and employed in the European Union now. Only Ukrainians, before the war, there were 200,000. Most of them coming through Poland and Lithuania. So this means it's not about Romanians, it's not about Bulgarians, it's not about Uzbekistan, Georgians, or Ukrainians. These are human beings, and some of them may be criminals. But what it is about, and that's why I'm mentioning this point, because when I heard it, it just raised this idea of bias and treatment of drivers. Because I'll talk about parkings as well, but it's not only about parkings. It's a myriad of causes which trigger driver shortage, which make this profession unattractive to many people, including young people. And one of them is the treatment of drivers. And it is a reality. Again, we have a lot of shippers in the room. It is a reality that drivers are treated disrespectfully, and especially drivers coming from certain countries who do not speak the language of the country where they come. They are treated as second-hand people. And unfortunately, long-haul driving, because they don't go home in the evening, because they do have some sacrifices, because there are no parking areas and so on, is very unattractive for people in this. It even becomes unattractive for Romanians and Bulgarians, if we want to speak nationalities, and for Polish. We are now talking about Uzbekistan and Georgians and Ukrainians and the others. We are going further in order to get these people to be weeks on the road. So that's why there must be a mind shift, a change, to see in these people not criminals, not people who do not speak our language, but people who move our goods. And without them, we can't do. And change our perception and treat them humanly. And there should be policies to treat them like that. Policies, like any company has a policy on how to treat your customer, there should be a policy how to treat your driver, the driver coming to fetch the goods from there. Now, parking areas. Of course, there is a big problem with parking areas because we saw a figure, there are 300,000 parking spots in the EU, not safe and secure, 300,000 parking spots in the EU, and 100,000 missing. Now, this is data which is already old data from, I think, 2019. The European Commission will now commission a new study to update these figures, and there are only 7,000 safe and secure truck parking areas according to the classification of the Commission. So there is a big lack of these parking areas. Now, what does it mean to drivers? It means that their working conditions are not very attractive. But there is something I would like to mention, because it's a reaction to the previous presentation as well, because it was a very truthful statement which was made that these safe and secure truck parking areas, even the moment they are built, they are not so much used. And that's a reality. And how come? Is that a paradox? It's a paradox. So we need safe and secure truck parking areas, but then when we have them, they are largely empty. And there are some very expensive and, let's say, very high-value transport, they go there. But they can't have a business case only with some high-value things, so they need mass. So what is the explanation and what is the solution? And I think that the truth is very simple. If safe and secure truck parking areas operators look for a business case only with transport operators, they won't have it. It's as simple as this. But there are opportunities in the future, because I just talked earlier in my presentation about alternative fuel infrastructure, electric charging. So the moment more and more trucks will be electric, whether electric trucks will be the solution or the only solution for long-haul traffic, that's another question, and that's not the place to discuss that. But the more electric trucks we have, the more need will be for charging them. So why not thinking out of the box? Why not also thinking of safe and secure truck parking areas as essential facilities? Because these drivers are something essential for the economy to move. If these conditions are not improved, they will not come, or they will leave the profession. So that's something which has to go high up at government's level. And there must be a different, that's something in Germany, for example, because it's one of the most transited countries. I think for 30 years we've been talking about parking areas. Where are they with parking areas? We still see a lot of trucks on the sideway of the motorways by the forests, right? So they are not there. But never until now has there been such a threat. And the governments know, because we've done our job, so we let everybody know about the threat of the missing drivers. So there must be a completely different approach, a top-down approach. It has to be also governments moving, recognizing the issue, and moving down and having more coordinated policies in making this happen. So we'll see what the future brings, but definitely when we look at the legislation, coming back to what we are doing in Brussels, the legislation on the table, we see that the Commission proposed, because we said 7,000, now 7,000 safe and secure truck parking areas in the EU. Will there be more? Will there be more safe and secure truck parking areas? The European Commission made a proposal, it's called 10T. Sounds cryptic, 10T. So it's like about the 10T is the network of motorways in the European Union. And in the proposal, the Commission suggested that member states should make sure that by a certain date, there will be a safe and secure truck parking area every 100 kilometers on the 10T network, so the main corridors, and also on the other network, which is called comprehensive, so the smaller roads, a further date. What do you think member states did? Because I just said there must be this awareness and the top-down approach. What do you think member states did? They took the obligation out. There is no obligation for member states to build these safe and secure truck parking areas. They will do if they can. So they changed the wording in such a way that they will do their best efforts to have these truck parking areas there, which means in 10 years, we'll have in Germany the same situation we have today and 15 and 20 years ago, right? So there is really, the piece of legislation is not out yet because the parliament is fighting to the opposite. So we managed to persuade the parliament to have a more ambitious approach, but in the end, it's the member states who will have to make the investment. That's where the problem lies. So we are definitely calling for safe and secure truck parking areas. We are calling for member states' awareness and direct intervention in making this happen, and also in a solution for the business case. Because, well, in the end, of course, and we heard it before, transport operators, we can pay for everything, but we have to be able to pass it on the shippers. And the shippers have to be able to pass it on their customers. And it's a vicious circle. So it's very difficult to find, again, the solution there in transport operators and drivers paying their allowance for safe and secure truck parking areas. So new business models have to be created. So again, just to sum up, there is digitalization with opportunities, but also challenges related to cybersecurity. There are the environmental files which have security connections, both in connection with digitalization, the transmission of this onboard monitoring data to an indefinite number of stakeholders. There are the social aspects with the driver shortage, which unfortunately go beyond parkings, but parkings are definitely a part of them. And we are very grateful to have organizations like TAPA looking into the cybersecurity, because we really see our roles as complementary. Because IRU is there to intervene with politicians on these files. We do have our statistics as well, but they focus on the driver shortage. So we don't have security at the core of our activities. Security for us is one of the preconditions for this job to be attractive for the drivers. That's the perspective we look at security. We look at having a good running business with good drivers, and these drivers stay there if they feel also secure. So we are looking forward to to continue our collaboration with TAPA, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Sit down. Come and join me here.
Here?
Yeah, wherever you're comfortable. Raluca, thank you so much for that. And once again, I do invite anybody who has any questions. We have one over here. So we'll get a microphone. It's like Gilad there, I think.
Hi.
Do you want to stand up?
Yeah, I'm Gilad from Amazon, and you refer to our presentation. So first, as a disclosure, my mother was born in Romania, so that's for your information.
Did she change her name?
No, that's my father's name. From Poland, actually. So both are. You referred to the Romanian identity of drivers. And this is a misunderstanding of what the presentation was about. It's the registration of companies. The drivers are not necessarily Romanian, but actually we saw exploitation of the legislation capabilities in Romania to register groups that are organized crime exploiting the situation. And actually, further, when law enforcement intervention in some of those operations occurred, we saw actually crime disposition into Germany and further to France. So it's not only about Romania. The big issue, the root cause of the challenge, of the situation, is the ease for organized crime to register as carriers. And maybe this is something that you can clarify what IRU is doing in order to make it more robust, because when we will be able to do some kind of measures to prevent penetration of organized crime into this industry, maybe it will bring more drivers and will make it more attractive industry.
I have a very easy answer there. IRU is a pan-national organization, and registration of companies is national, so we can't do anything in Romania, although I'm Romanian. So we are in Geneva and in Brussels, so we deal with international and then with the European Union organizations. We have federations in all EU member states, and they are dealing with these aspects. But it's true, I'm sure you have your data, so I'm not contesting the data you are having, but it's true that a lot of Western European companies, and I mean very reputed companies, not organized crime, can be organized crime as well. Of course, wrongdoers are everywhere, right? And they have no nationality, as I said, but there are a lot of companies in the West who opened offices in Poland, in Romania, and after the accession, because of course they had cheaper labor there. Now the conditions are somehow harmonized because we have the mobility package 1 and the posting and so on. But it was easier to attract drivers and so on. So the fact that there are a lot of companies open in Eastern Europe is a widespread phenomenon, which doesn't have to do only with organized crime, but could have attracted also organized crime. So I'm not contesting. My point was just that again, I'm sorry to repeat again, organized crime has no nationality, but there may be some countries where they sneak easier. What can I say?
I think we had another question here at the front. If we could bring the microphone here, that would be great. Thank you. Please do stand up as well and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Me again, Fabio Barbosa from HP. I'm curious, I have a curiosity about what do you consider? We know that TAPA has requirements for secure parking, but by legislation, what is considered security parking area definition? What's the definition by your group or by legislation here in Europe that define this is a secure parking, what they should have? Is TAPA requirements or is other thing?
This is a story. Perhaps Torsten can can also tell it. The first standards were, I think, TAPA standards, but then the European Commission, they came with their own standards for safe and secure truck parking areas. And we contributed to that as well, because there is something which is called Safe and Secure Truck Parking Areas Expert Group, where you have also member states and some federations and so relevant stakeholders. I think TAPA was also in the group, if I'm not mistaken. And then they came up with these, let's say, European Union-wide recognized, officially recognized standards. So, and there is a classification there. Don't ask me, I can Google it on my mobile and then I can read the thing to you, but they have some classification. There is like golden, diamond, whatever, so there are different levels of safe, exactly. And everything is written there, including the conditions. So yeah, that's the official, but I think TAPA's standards work in parallel. Torsten, if
Come
you
and join us,
want
Torsten.
to
We have
add.
to grab a microphone.
I have a microphone here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a. To be honest, it would be an answer which will now really. We need hours for that, because it's a very long story. At the end of the day, it's interesting again, because IRU is also supporting TAPA for quite a long time. But of course, we fully understand, and we even said that straight from the beginning. That it's not the security we need. It's really we need to change the conditions for the drivers. And we as TAPA always said to the European Commission always, we don't need more secure parking places. We need parking places. We need to ensure that the drivers can come to a rest. That's the most important thing. And so that's the reason why we showed the numbers also, because at the end, the European Union or the European Commission is saying we have 7,000 secure parking places. But it's not true. TAPA is having 27,000 already, which is certified against the TAPA standard, but it's not recognized by the European Union. We recognize the European Union standard, but the European Union is not recognizing our standard. And that's the big fight right now. We can say it here, it's the European Union. It's bullshit in politics. And I'm sorry to say that sometimes.
And money, because that's the immediate consequence, because there is, and we fought for those monies, so it's like 250 million which are made available every year from EU funds for building safe and secure truck parking areas. But these are the safe and secure truck parking areas according to
the EU.
Their standards. Yes. And that's also the reason why because many don't get the money, because their projects are not mature enough because of the conditions there. So, yeah.
And it's the same like what Raluca already said, if you are very active, then you go for the money, then you receive the money from the European Union. But at the end, they build parking places with European Union money. You would never park. I'm sorry to say it, but it's known that you wouldn't park this, like for example in some areas in Romania, even if you have a good parking place, because there's no need to park there. But in Germany, there's a huge need for parking places. Yeah. But the German government, unfortunately, are not going for that. And it's the same like in some other areas. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. I still remember when I was at one of the first groups, and a lot of big organizations left the European Union SSTPA expert group. So, for example, the biggest association in Germany for parking places left the group, and they said, we are done with it. But we will see. The future will see. What I like is that IRU is always fighting, and she's absolutely right, 100%. The biggest challenge we have in the industry is the lack of drivers. And what is the reason? It's not the secured parking places. No, they've been treated like, like the second. It's really like this. And nobody. It's quite interesting. Okay, so you're sitting with them. You're sitting with the European Union, and they explain you this. Then you go to the German government, and I'm sitting at the Transport Ministry, and they say, "Oh, we love it." Then you go to the city, and the city is saying, "A parking place for truck drivers in my city? No way."
No, trucks are. I'm telling a quotation from the mayor of Paris. Trucks are dirty.
Yes, that's what the guy.
Yeah. He told a big transport operator, in his face.
Yeah. So nobody wants a trucking parking place in your neighborhood. It's obvious. Honestly, it's not a joke. It's like this. So I'm sorry that I jumped in, but it was.
No. Thank you very much, Torsten.
There's a question.
Just have another question here. Yeah, that's that microphone will do just perfectly. Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Sven Brink. I work for Mylands, and Mylands is one of the new kids on the block of TAPA.
We know.
And Mylands has its history as a joint venture founded by three mothers, as I call them. Traton, the truck division of Volkswagen, Volvo Group, and Daimler Trucks. And the story I do hear now, and also before, is all about future and business cases for truck parkings. The task we have been given is build a network in Europe of charging hubs for electric trucks. And we have taken the decision they need to be secure. Not only because the market is asking that, and we see it going that direction, but also we want to give the absolute guarantee that if a truck has made a booking because he's en route and he sees the demand for charging, that there will be a charger available for him. So in our eyes, there is a business case for secure truck parkings because in the nearby future and next year, the trucks will come to the market that have a range between 400 and 600 kilometers, so they are capable of doing long haul. There will be demand for charging hubs on secure parkings. So the story from Bosch, we talked to them, FlightSafe, we talked to them, all of them. We are looking for spots in Europe to build this kind of infrastructure. And there's one but: power. We need a lot of power.
Yeah.
And that's the demand that comes with these locations. But there is a future, and we believe in it, and we are building it. Yesterday I bought land in Denmark. This morning we bought land in Italy. We are actually expanding and building a network of secure parkings for electric trucks of the future.
Yeah, but that's an excellent example, and that's exactly what I was saying, that operators of safe and secure truck parking areas have to think out of the box and look also from the perspective of alternative fuel infrastructure, and combining their business case, not only fees for accessing the parking, but also with building this infrastructure. We know Mylands well, and yeah, we are discussing with your colleagues. Excellent initiative.
I just wanted to, we've got a couple of minutes left, to a couple of other topics that we haven't touched on that much already. Just in terms of the challenges which are posed to trucks and drivers by migrants, how does the IRU see the EU and UK policy towards illegal immigration and the liability that's placed on road transport operators when stowaways are found on board a vehicle?
So as we heard before, there are criminals, but not all transport operators are criminals. So actually the majority of them are not. They are just running their businesses. So it is very concerning to see that in the UK, it's already happening, and in the EU, there was an initiative which luckily, with all the interventions possible, and they managed to understand and they dropped this initiative. But in the UK, we already have it. They put more and more sanctions on transport operators, not giving them even the chance to defend themselves if they find stowaways on board. So I think now the fine is 25,000 per immigrant, per illegal immigrant found on board. And they don't care if the transport operator invested in additional security features of the truck. It could be a mitigating circumstance. I know something, nothing. They don't care if this investment was made. They only see, and then they create an assumption that the operator knew, and then you have to go to court and battle and demonstrate you didn't know, and that these people just sneaked. For many times also, it's not the truck with the driver crossing the channel, right? So there are just the trailers and semi-trailers put on the wagons, and then they cross. So who is supposed to take the risk? But they assume is the transport operator. So that's really, and we can't battle that. In the UK, we can't battle it anymore. It's law. So it's already on transport operator. But the EU wanted to do something similar, not to set sanctions because that's not within their power, but to create a kind of an assumption. And the consequence in the EU would have been also automatic withdrawal of license. So they find an immigrant, an illegal immigrant on board of a truck, automatically assume that the transport operators knew and withdraw the license. So we managed to make member states understand that this is a no-go, and they convinced the Commission to drop the proposal because it was really going too far. And also talking about the treatment of drivers, that's also treatment of drivers by enforcers is another problem. It's not only by shippers. I mentioned the shippers because we have them in the room, but they are also sometimes treated as criminals by the enforcers, by definition, when they are stopped, and there are also language things, so they make the drivers really shiver. Huh? And if they find an immigrant, what do you think the driver is treated?
Just finally, just to wrap up before we move on, and just in a short sentence, really, although I appreciate it can't be. We're just emerging from a major global health crisis. We're seeing the impacts of the conflict in Ukraine as well. Are there any lessons learnt for the road transport industry from these seismic events we're experiencing?
I would say not only lessons learned, there are even procedures which have been set up and which will help. Hopefully, we won't see any other similar crisis like the COVID crisis in our life, but there are procedures, and I would just say, because you wanted me to be short, green lanes. We really fought for these green lanes. You remember these massive congestions at the newly created borders. We are used now to live without borders. All of a sudden, there were borders. There was no Schengen anymore. So 60 kilometers of queues on Brenner between Austria and Germany. And the economy was about to collapse because there was congestion everywhere. And we are not used to deal with congestion anymore at the borders. And then this procedure of green lanes, whereby trucks can't be stopped for a long time and can go, how to test the drivers as well, not to create this kind of uncertainty. What happens to the truck when the driver is found positive with COVID and so on? All these procedures are now in place. So there is a crisis mechanism which has been developed.
Well, Raluca, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure if anybody does want to catch up with you afterwards, you'll be around.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raluca.